Hi, my name is Nils Naujoks and I'm a professional sim racer for G2 Esports. Overall, there's huge debate in sim racing whether or not hardware can make you faster. I don't think in particular if you have the talent, the hardware will make you shine or put you at the back of the field. In the past 2 decades, sim racing equipment has made a major leap. Of course, we were taking deeper takes onto pedals, racing wheels, PCs and of course monitors as well. In particular, the monitor in sim racing is like one of the few connections you have to the car. Everything is perceived visually in the first place, and therefore it's really important to have high frame rates, low response rates of the monitor, because this gives you a competitive advantage in the end and makes it easier for you to perceive what the car is doing.
Between the two of them. The inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
The Silverstone International Circuit is the venue this weekend for the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. And we're getting to the business end of the championship now. 2 races here, 2 on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch next Saturday, still to go. And the top 14 drivers in the championship, the top 14, yes, all mathematically in with a chance of winning the championship. And the international circuit is not one on which many people will have raced, certainly not in touring car terms. Last year's British touring car event penciled in, didn't happen on the international circuit, although perversely there was the day's testing just before the country went into lockdown. So for some, it is a real step into the unknown. However, one thing we can be absolutely assured of, and that is great racing. We've had it all season long, and with a circuit new to many, the ballast and the fact that they need now to be scoring well because we're running out of rounds in the championship, we should be in for 2 belting races. David Addison and Andy McEwan looking forward hugely, I think, Andy, to whether we can add to our list of winners and what action we're going to get from the international circuit, because it's a good circuit for touring car racing, this.
It really should be, I think. I've seen a fair few race meetings on the international layout in the past, 1.8 miles in length, and as you can see on the screen there, it's this usual mix of sort of Silverstone characteristics, long, fast straights leading into big braking zones, much as we saw a week ago on the national circuit. That produces really good racing, lots of overtaking opportunities, arguably more overtaking opportunities actually on the international circuit than there were on the national, and well, last week's races were pretty entertaining, so I think we should see a step up in excitement even this weekend, especially when you then factor in just how tight this championship is.
The race officials will be delighted to hear that, seeing that they managed to get through last week, actually, with only 1 protest, and it didn't even change a race result, so it was relatively calm, apart from a couple of drive-through penalties that had to have 30 seconds applied. But you'll see from the way the championship looks just how many drivers have incurred the wrath of officialdom. Mike Epps, for example, he leads the championship but has got 6 penalty points. Isaac Smith behind him, 4 points adrift, but he's lost 10 championship points. Dave Marshall, though, who just gets on with life, there he is, 3rd, very much a potential champion, and without any penalty points to his name. He's just ahead of Senna Proctor. Callum Newsham and Max Goff come next, ahead of Charlie Oliver, who's lost 13 points now in the championship for various offences. Then you've got Max Bird, Jordan Brennan and Robbie Stapleford to round out the top 10. We should be on for 23 drivers, I think, going into today's 2 races. We've lost Max Coates, sadly, because he's actually at Silverstone in the real world, doing real world coaching. So he did think about racing virtually, but in a real scenario, but it all got too complicated. So he's going to keep an eye on the stream in between doing his driver coaching. Qualifying is coming up in a few moments. Then we get to race 1, which of course is 20 minutes plus a lap. Same for race 2, the grid for that based on the results of race 1. With that top 12 reversed on the grid. So lots to look forward to. And remember that there is just one more event to go after this, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit next Saturday, when we'll find out, fingers crossed, who is going to be the champion. One hopes that we can resolve it on the day rather than it needing to be a judicial fest later in the week, because the race officials have on more than one occasion this year had a lot to look at. However, let's concentrate on today. The Grand Prix circuit lends itself to some of the international layout here. Then you've got that little cut through that takes you from effectively the start of the loop up towards the exit of Chapel Curve, and there Robbie Stapleford out on track, making his way now down towards Stowe, down then through Vale towards Club, which effectively is a double apex right. And at the moment, nobody, I don't think, despite the length of the circuit, Andy, has managed to find themselves clear track space.
No, exactly, and we saw this a week ago on a much shorter version of the Silverstone circuit, that finding clear air can be tricky, but actually finding a slipstream partner can potentially gain you a bit of lap time down these long straights, especially down the Hanger Straight. So we may see teammates getting themselves together on track again, as we saw a week ago. Just how successful that's going to be is unknown at the moment. I'm really interested, David, to see what some of the drivers' tactics are today over these two races, because we've been talking all season about how tight the championship points are. You know, there's next to nothing between any of the top 10 or 12 drivers or so in the championship. And Mike Epps has been saying all year long that carrying the weight is a hindrance. Do you really want to be carrying maximum championship ballast into the final round at Brands Hatch? 75 kilos in the car is an awful lot, and a few of the drivers have said it actually affects the car in the sim more than it would do in real life. So I'm intrigued to see whether maybe a Mike Epps or a Dave Marshall or even a Senna Proctor decide that it might be worth dropping a few points almost over the two races today, lose a bit of ballast going to Brands Hatch, and maybe put yourself in a position where you can be racier if you find yourself out of position on the grid or having to gain ground in a reverse grid race. With a lighter car, that's going to be more doable. So this will be a really intriguing pair of races. Aside from just the close racing we'll see, there is so much tactics going on inside the drivers' minds.
They may, of course, not really have any say in that losing points because of the weight of the car aspect, because as we've seen at various venues, the ballast really does hurt. Mike Epps, I think, may have dropped the hint on more than one occasion about how severe the ballast can be. Max Goff's an example, Callum Newsham another, of somebody that was well up in the championship and the very next event copped for all the weight and was absolutely nowhere. So if the weight is a real handicap, it may be out of your hands. You may be at the back and losing the weight anyway, just because you haven't got the pace and therefore you haven't got the results. But Mike Epps then goes through and onto a proper flying lap now. He's already put himself up to 7th. Rob Butler back into the championship. Remember, he was absent a week ago for nappy changing duties. A new dad he was, like about 2 hours into fatherhood. But a week on and life goes back to normal. He's in the sim.
Yes, good to have him back. Good grid of cars out there as well. 23 drivers, and we expect them all to be very evenly matched around a circuit like this. Rob Butler we're following now through Stowe Corner. He is at the moment fastest in the session, 1:06.0, and then dives for the pit lane. So that's interesting. Only the one flying lap then out of that set of tyres. He's going to head in now for some tyre changes. More improvements coming in. Jack McIntyre jumps into the top 5. Dan Zelos is up there again, isn't he? And I think he's a good tip for a race win or two before the season's over. Second place in the last 3 races is Dan. He's 3rd fastest in the session. There he is in the orange and black Davanti tyres Golf. A race win before the season's over is an almost certainty, you'd have to say, for Dan. He's out of championship contention, but definitely a contender for race wins and podiums.
It's a shame that he was one of the late comers halfway through the season, because I think on pure pace, as he cuts the corner there rather markedly, coming towards Chapel Curve, he would have been up there fighting for the championship. We've seen how good he's been in the past in things like Clios and more recently Minis, and the pace that's been evinced over the last 2 or 3 events. As I say, makes one wonder what could have happened had he done the entire championship. Rob Butler, though, the fastest from Jack Keithley, who, as we keep saying, Andy, has had a real yo-yo kind of a season. Good days and bad days, but not consistent enough, really, to be in with a shout. And he comes here, of course, now out of the top 10 in the championship, so weight-free for the first time in a while.
Yeah, 3 podium finishes this year, Keithley, but only one of those has come, in fact none of them have come yet in the second half of the season. He had those 2 third places at the start of the year at Brands Hatch, and then had another 2nd place at Snetterton, but was off the podium at Croft. He was off the podium a week ago too. So yeah, Keithley, to build a championship campaign, really needs to start winning races ideally, or certainly getting into the top 3 places. He is ballast free this weekend, and you know, if he has a good couple of races, could move himself into the top 10, but not so high up the top 10 that he's then laden with a lot of ballast for Brands Hatch at the finale. So this is a bit of a make or break weekend for a number of drivers. Keithley is one. I think Robbie Stapleford is another, who we know has race winning potential, but just hasn't really been scoring enough points in the second half of the year. Max Bird, Charlie Oliver also. These drivers need a good day today to really put themselves in a good position going to Brands Hatch.
Yeah, Jack Keithley is just within that magic 14 of people mathematically in with a chance of winning the championship. So, as you say, weight free ought to be on for some good results here, one would hope today. The best of those with ballast at the moment is Charlie Oliver, up to 4th fastest now. He's got 27 kilos in the Audi. And where is Max Bird? Is he another weight carrier? Yes, he's 7th and he's got 15. Jordan Brennan, 21 kilos, and he is 8th. There is Max Bird going up towards Village. So this section, of course, on the Grand Prix circuit, then you would turn left through the loop and on towards Aintree. But here you use that little cut through, and that takes you to Chapel Curve and onto Hanger Straight. So Max Bird, again, quick in Ginettas, quick in Minis. Maybe hasn't quite delivered what we anticipated in this championship. We've always been talking about how he's about to deliver. 1 second place has been the best, but I still confess to being a bit surprised that he's not actually had a win, because in the real world, certainly, we know the ability is there.
Yeah, Max seems to find himself sort of stuck in the middle to the back of the top 10, and that's just where you tend to get a bit of argy-bargy, and 9 times out of 10 it seems that Max is one of those that loses from those situations rather than gains. So a little bit unlucky, certainly, but as you said, one of many drivers who have shown they have the potential to win races, and his 2 podium finishes are testament to that. Max Goff here hops through the curbs through Club. He is 5th place in the championship. Max had his first non-point scoring weekend a week ago. In fact, I seem to recall he didn't race at the Silverstone National Circuit a week ago. Good to have him back this weekend, although he's only 11th place, improves to 11th on that previous lap. Whilst Jordan Brennan is halfway round the flying lap. Jordan, the highest placed driver in the championship without a podium. And Stuart Lyons, I'm afraid, is rather taking the wrong line through Club Corner, pointing the wrong way, I think. After contact, and definitely contact there with Dave Newsham as he tries to rejoin. That is not supposed to happen in qualifying.
It's not, no, you're quite right. Max Goff did race a week ago, but he was laden up with ballast, which rather did for him. So he was 19th in the first race, didn't finish the second. So having shed weight, he also loses points, but comes here with a lighter car, 39 kilos, rather than the 66 that he had to lug around the national circuit last week. Martin Richards here is pressing on, turning his way a little bit wide, it must be said, out of Village and launching himself over the curb, heading through the loop up towards Chapel Curve. So the Drift King with work to do. Max Edmondson in the meantime has got himself up to 5th in the times, and he's busy with Senna Proctor right now. Now where is Senna out of all of this? He's another one with work to do, because he's only 17th fastest.
Yeah, and he heads for the pit lane, as do many of the drivers. We've got about a third of the field roughly either heading into the pit lane or already in the pit lane. Tyres are going to be a factor here. This is quite a hard circuit on tyres. Most of the corners are right-handers, and 2 or 3 of them are quite high speed and quite long corners as well. Abbey, Stowe, Club, you're leaning on that left front tyre for quite a long time. So the front tyres maybe only have 2 or 3 really good laps in them. And that's why we're seeing people, I think, diving for the pit lane here halfway through, just past halfway through the session. We have had a few improvements though. Charlie Oliver is one driver in the pit lane who's jumped onto the front row now. Not bad considering he's carrying 27 kilos of success ballast. And Jack McIntyre goes 3rd to make it now 5 drivers within 1/10 of a second of each other. Butler, Oliver, McIntyre, Zelos and Keithley virtually inseparable.
Whereas Isaac Smith, 2nd in the championship, is only 20th, 66 kilos of weight in the car and seemingly struggling at the moment. He's not making the progress that he needs to. With still 5.5 minutes on the clock, Isaac Smith goes through. Does he improve? No, 20th he remains on that lap. Goes now through Abbey, the right-hander. Use the curb through Farm, then speed building up towards Village, where you're going to stand on the brakes, down through the gears, turn sharp right, back onto the power, drag the car out of the corner. And instead of hitting the brakes and turning sharp left through the loop, you kink left, wriggle up towards the exit of the Beckett's S's, clip the curb, now through the exit of Chapel Curve onto Hanger Straight and down with the speed building once more towards Stowe Corner, the Porsche driving centre on the left-hand side. Fastest part of the circuit, and then hit the brakes for Stowe, ready to turn right and drop down through Vale. And Smith looking good at the moment. Dave Newsham has just got himself up to 9th in the times, but it is still Rob Butler looking for a maiden pole position ahead of Charlie Oliver now by just 46 thousandths of a second. Jack McIntyre 3rd, Dan Zelos 4th in the times ahead of Jack Keithley and Max Edmondson. But where does Isaac Smith feed in at the end of this? He gets into Club Corner through the second element, takes a big bite of curb, fires the car over the timing line, and where is that going to put him? He was 20th at the start of the lap. Is he 20th by the end of it as well? Sad to say, yes he is. No improvement. So Isaac Smith, with the weight, really struggling.
And you could see it riding on board with him through Club there, the left-right transition. The car just didn't want to change direction. It was really lethargic, and that is what carrying 66 kilos of success ballast will do for you. But we know that when he's not running a lot of ballast, Isaac is very quick. So again, perhaps shedding a few points today might not be the worst thing in the world. 3 times a winner, Isaac Smith, joint top on the wins list with Mike Epps, of course. So he and Mike, the 2 heaviest cars out there at the moment, but they may well be thinking more about getting what they can from the 2 races today, and instead concentrating on the finale in a week's time. David Ward crosses the line, 14th quickest for him, 6/10 of a second, just under 6/10 away from pole position. But it is very, very tight at the top. Interestingly though, David, Rob Butler still in the pit lane. Now, is that a sign that he thinks he's given all he can? He's certainly not in a rush to get back out on track, whereas most of the others have now headed out for their final run.
Yeah, I think he's possibly ventured out just now as you were saying that, but sign of confidence, very definitely. Rob Butler then looking good ahead of Charlie Oliver there in the yellow Audi coming on to Hanger Straight, and Jack McIntyre in the background also currently 3rd in the times. Jack McIntyre's Honda Civic Type R. Now there is Charlie Oliver, who we know is very quick indeed, certainly in races. 7 times he has taken the fastest race lap. He's had 1 win plus 1 on the road, but has also, as I said early on, incurred the wrath of officialdom quite a bit, hence lots of lost points within the championship through penalties. However, in terms of pace, and indeed being an all-round good egg, because he's one of the more loquacious drivers, Charlie Oliver has made quite an impact in the championship this year. He is now down to 3rd in the times, because Rob Butler is down to 2nd, because Dan Zelos goes top then by 12 thousandths of a second. So with 2 minutes and change on the clock, out once more comes Jack Keithley in the background, but it is Dan Zelos there, look, in the orange Golf, who's gone to the top of the times. Now, is he going to be able to go even faster? Can he respond if he needs to, or is that the work done? We'll find out, but right now, he's done enough for pole position.
Yeah, just set the fastest lap of the session and yet was still weaving down the Hanger Straight to try and get heat into the tyres. So maybe there's even more speed to be had. Jack Keithley bailing out of that lap so as not to get in the way of people that are still on flying laps. One of the Newshams there in the background was running very, very wide. And what of Mike Epps? I can see him at the top of the screen, but he's towards the bottom of the timing tower. 6/10 of a second off the pace is the championship leader. 15th quickest. Remember, you score points within the top 15 in the race, so he's there or thereabouts to get a couple of points if he finishes where he looks like he'll start. But he and Dave Marshall look really suffering again. Dave Marshall carrying 57 kilos, and Mike Epps ain't going to improve on 15th, in fact 16th now, as James Merrills improves to 13th and goes ahead of him. Epps heading for the pit lane, so to all intents and purposes, his session is done.
It is indeed. So Dan Zelos then is set for the point for pole. They're going through is Max Bird, 8th fastest at the moment. So Zelos and Butler for the front row, McIntyre and Oliver row 2, Keithley Edmondson the 3rd row, Brennan and Bird row 4, Newsham Senior and Stapleford row 5. Callum Newsham's a long way back, 14th. Dave Marshall a long way back, 15th. Ditto Mike Epps, 16th. And Max Goff, 17th. And Senna Proctor, 18th. And Isaac Smith, 21st. So we've got a kind of semi-reverse grid anyway, haven't we? With a good half dozen of the star drivers with a lot of work to do in their very heavy cars. The flag is imminent. 44 seconds are on the clock, as there is Max Edmondson, 6th fastest. And he's only got to find hundredths to move up 1 place on the grid.
Yeah, comes out of Stowe Corner, down through the Vale, into the braking zone and Club Corner. Brake discs glowing there as he tries and actually fails to get the car stopped in time. He overshot the left-hander slightly. That puts him offline then for the right-hander, and that will just compromise his momentum all the way through the double apex right-hander at Club. doubt this will be an improvement. Indeed, it's not. But he's got Jack Keithley right ahead of him. So the man that he's trying to beat for a position inside the top 5 is only a few car lengths ahead, inadvertently in a way, giving Max Edmonson a bit of a tow, which could help his next and final lap time.
Zelos for the pit then. Max Bird has also gone for the pit lane. The flag is out. So the session at an end. Jack McIntyre squeezes one more lap out of it. Now he looks committed to all of this, but is it going to put him onto the front row of the grid? And is anybody also going to shuffle that order lower down? Newsham, Marshall, Epps, Goff, Proctor, they are the ones that need to find something, as also does Isaac Smith. Jack McIntyre on that inset picture then. He's got traffic ahead of him. Accelerates down towards Stowe, this right-hander that tightens as you turn through it, then drop down through Vale. But right now, Dan Zelos is taking the flag, he's in the pits, he's looking good for pole position, unless Jack McIntyre, who's also racing in the mini challenge this year, the esports mini challenge, as well as the touring car e-series, if he can do something really sparkling on this last lap, get himself onto the front row, let's see. Failing that, he's going to be on the second row, comes out of club, whoops, makes a mistake, and oh no, or words to that effect. He says he knows he got it wrong, so he'll cross the line, but without really much pace anymore. So a mistake at the very last corner, and it's cost him dear.
Yeah, that was unfortunate because he was pushing on there, and I think the look of disgust on his face tells us he was probably on a decent lap. He will have had his split times coming up on his screen, I'm sure, telling him how competitive he was looking, but sadly won't improve as the session now is over.
Indeed so. So Dan Zelos takes pole position from Rob Butler second on the grid. Jack McIntyre is going to start third ahead of Jack Keithley. Charlie Oliver ending up fifth ahead of Max Edmonson. Then Jordan Brennan and Max Bird seventh and eighth. Dave Newsham ninth, and the top 10 rounded out by Robbie Stapleford. We used to have a word with Dan Zelos about that excellent qualifying session, because he has taken a maiden pole position, gets a point for that, and Andy McEwan is with him to have a word.
Yeah, thank you, David. Dan Zelos with me now. Then, Dan, congratulations on the pole position. It's so tight out there. It must feel good to come out on top.
Definitely. It was definitely a tight qualifying. I didn't think I quite had it in me to beat Rob at the end there. I can't lie, a little bit of toe helped. But yeah, the times are so close, and I'm sure the race will just be the same.
Yeah, there's going to be no escaping here, is there? Because the top sort of 4 or 5 cars all covered by just a tenth of a second in qualifying. And with that slipstream, I think they're going to be on your tail for most of the race, aren't they?
Definitely. But we've all got a race 2 to think about. So, you know, I'm just going to try and make sure I just keep on track, keep with the front pack, whatever happens, and make sure we get a decent reverse grid slot so we can try and come away with 2 races with 2 good results, just like last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's a sensible approach, I think, to have, but you must be itching to get that first win. You've had this brilliant run of second places recently. How much would it mean to you to go top and actually get a win against such a competitive field?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I was trying to not. Yeah, it would be great to have a win. It would be great to, they've got a load of great guys, real racers, sim racers in the championship. So to get on top would be lovely. But I'm going to try and keep my head cool. We can bring this Devanti Tyres golf home in one piece, and hopefully we can be leading the way, as Devanti Tyres say.
Nicely done. Looking forward to seeing how you get on, Dan. Best of luck.
Thank you.
There you go then, David. Pressure well and truly heaped on Dan Zelos' shoulders now as we prepare for the start of race 1.
Absolutely right, yes. So, good to hear from Dan Zelos. We wish him well for the first race, which is coming up shortly then. As the drivers get themselves set, they will get themselves back into the server, and we will be good to go with then on pole position Dan Zelos, Rob Butler with him at the front of the grid, Jack McIntyre and Jack Keithley sharing row 2, Charlie Oliver on row 3 with Max Edmonson for company. The 4th row then, Jordan Brennan lining up alongside Max Bird. The 5th row of the grid is Dave Newsham, and alongside him is Robbie Stapleford, ahead of David Ward and Alex Toth-Jones, who are on row 6. Row 7 is James Merrills and Callum Newsham. The 8th row, Dave Marshall and Mike Epps. Well worth watching the fight from down here. Max Goff and Senna Proctor next, ahead of Stuart Lyons and Martin Richards. Then Isaac Smith and Kenny Press, with Mick Sutton, the man who is going to round out the grid. We've had 3 wins for Mike Epps, 3 for Isaac Smith, 2 for Callum Newsham, and 1 each to Rob Butler, Max Goff, Robbie Stapleford and Charlie Oliver. Can we get another new driver to add their name to that list? And also, just think about this grid and factor in the ballast as well. Nothing for Dan Zelos, nothing for Rob Butler, nor for Jack McIntyre, nor for Jack Keithley, the top four. Charlie Oliver lining up 5th has 27 kilos. There's nothing for Max Edmondson. Jordan Brennan next has 21. Max Bird has 15. And then on the next row, there's Dave Newsham, who is weight-free. There's Robbie Stapleford, 9 kilos. David Ward has nothing, nor does Alex Toth-Jones on the next row. Then you get to James Merrills. He's another ballast-free driver. Callum Newsham has 33 kilos of weight. Dave Marshall has 57 on the next row to the 75 of Mike Epps. Max Goff's got 39 to lug around. Senna Proctor has 48. And then if you go back a little bit further, you've got Isaac Smith with 66 kilos. So there's a real spread of the ballast across the grid as we are set to go racing then for our first 20-minute plus 1 lap instalment of drama then. The Silverstone International Circuit. Dan Zelos, pole position on the outside of the road, and that's where the grip is coming out of Club Corner. He will get himself ready then for the 6 red lights to go on very shortly. Rob Butler on the inside line, but it's a 1-by-1 staggered grid, so he starts a car's length back. The Jacks, McIntyre and Keithley, are on row 2 ahead of Charlie Oliver and Max Edmondson. Keep out of trouble, we know, is absolutely essential in all of this, but so too, if you can do it, is making a break early on. So, lights go red. We are good to go racing. It is the 13th race of the championship. It is go, and a great start made by Dan Zelos. Then he tries to move across and defend from Rob Butler on the way down towards Abbey for the first time. Butler to the inside also has to go defensive. Jack Keithley tries to muscle up the inside line as well as they go through Abbey then for the first time up towards Farm. Zelos leads the way. Rob Butler goes to the inside to try to attack. To the outside of him goes Jack McIntyre around the outside at Village. Oliver was 4th, but he's down to 5th. Keithley goes ahead of him. There's drama towards the back of the pack as they wriggle their way up towards Chapel Curve for the first time. But Zelos has done what he needs to do. He's made a break of a couple of lengths already.
And McIntyre gets eased out wide by Keithley there, going out of the link. McIntyre tried to brave it out round the outside of Butler through Village. Butler promptly eased him onto the curb, and that delayed him enough that Keithley got at the inside into the next corner. So Jack Keithley going for 3rd place now, and will take it as they go through Stowe Corner. Whilst on the inset there, you can see Mike Epps already starting to make ground, actually up into 12th position, and I think was going for 11th there as they went into the braking zone.
Well, 12th would do it for pole, wouldn't it, for race 2? So keeping out of trouble as best he can, but also gaining ground. Now we'll see how much further he can get as the 2 Jacks, Keithley and McIntyre, 3rd and 4th, come through at the end of lap 1. But Dan Zelos leads the way. Rob Butler 2nd, 6/10 of a second back. You see how wide people run coming out of Club Corner. The perennial problem of Club these days is track limit abuse, and you can see why with all the runoff area there. Arms open, ready to greet you. Leaders flash through the very, very fast Abbey Curve. Up now through Farm. Hard braking for Village. There goes Mike Epps. He's already up to 11th. Max Goff behind him is under attack from Ward and Callum Newsham as they wriggle their way now through the link up towards Chapel. But Zelos to Butler. The gap is down by a 10th. So Rob Butler, the Irish driver, going after Dan Zelos.
Yeah, as we suspected, it's going to be difficult to break away, but nearly 6/10 of a second is Zelos' cushion. That's not bad, actually. The early laps are your chance to make that break, whilst everyone behind falls over each other. Dan is doing his best to escape. The cap coming back down again as they go through Stowe. The top 2 are breaking away, though, from the Keithley-McIntyre scrap for 3rd, and then they've got about half a second's cushion over Max Edmondson and everyone else trying to be in the top 5. Weave their way through Club Corner, out onto the pit straight again. McIntyre will be a bit frustrated here. Out-qualified Keithley, remember, and he will feel that he had the pace to win this race, but with every lap that he spends stuck behind Keithley, the gap to the leaders goes up as Senna Proctor has a big moment with Stuart Lyons at Club.
And just about survives the experience. 19th, he comes over the line then. Alex Toth-Jones has had a rather checkered start to the race as well, because he was mid-grid, but is now flat last. Mick Sutton hasn't made it into the race, interestingly, either. I'm sure we did see him briefly in qualifying. There is Stuart Lyons with damage then, so he's losing places. And Isaac Smith is still struggling to make progress, isn't he? He's still mired down in 20th place. On board with Jack McIntyre then. Behind him, Edmondson and Oliver are trying to go side by side down towards Stowe. There they are with the yellow Audi on the inside line. Charlie Oliver goes through up into 5th place then, takes that position away under braking for Stowe. Edmondson in the Golf comes back at him as they drop down through Vale. Behind them, Brennan, Bird, Newsham, Senior and Stapleford all running together as Edmondson does fight back at the end of Vale. A little bit of a rub, but Oliver fends him off into the first part of Club and now up towards the end of the lap as Zelos is still leading the way but still being caught by Rob Butler.
Yes, he is, although actually on that lap, yeah, Butler was fractionally quicker, wasn't he? So Rob Butler now less than half a second away from the race lead. There is Dave Newsham going through Abbey Corner, 9th place, wants that to become 8th if possible. He's right on the tail of Max Bird, with Robbie Stapleford, another championship contender, right behind them. So all 3 of these drivers mathematically could still win the title, and they're all scrapping for positions towards the back of the top 10. But as you made the point, David, that could be the front of the grid, or towards the front of the grid at least, for race number 2. Contact there as David Ward gets into the back of Max Goff. This is the fight actually for pole position in the second race. 12th position in this race gives you pole for race 2. Mike Epps, you can see, is getting away from him in 11th, but 2 or 3 cars behind him, all wanting to try and get that 12th place and salvage something from the weekend. Ward goes to the inside, but Goff is later on the brakes.
But Ward is lighter, so should have the pace. Now, what about Dave Marshall? Because he is another driver in with a chance of winning the championship, and he's only 15th, so he's almost with this gaggle of cars, but still with a bit more work to do, a bit more time to find. Jordan Brennan is up into the top 6 now, benefiting from a little bit of a clash between Oliver and Edmondson. There is Max Goff then through Club, goes wide, leaves the door open, and David Ward gets up the inside line then, so the Honda goes past the pits with its nose just ahead of Max Goff's car. Brake hard going into Abbey, start the lap, and Ward does go through into 12th. Provisional pole for race 2 as McIntyre is all over the back of Keithley. I just wonder whether those 2, and indeed taking Oliver with them, might not be a little bit nearer to the top 2 drivers now. So is that leading group becoming 5 cars thinking about the race lead? Certainly the gap between the top 2 has gone up a fraction, but I just think that Keithley plus McIntyre plus Oliver might be edging up onto the tail of that second place car.
Well, certainly Charlie Oliver is on the move, isn't he? He has reeled those 2 in very, very quickly, and that will be spurring Keithley and McIntyre on to try and a bit further up the road. Whoops, hopping over the curb there goes Dave Newsham. Max Edmondson then goes through into 8th position. Newsham down to 9th. He'll try to fight back into the braking zone. Get to the inside. No, he did not. So down a position for Dave Newsham. Just took a bit too much curb on the inside at Stowe Corner. That hopped the car out wide, and Edmondson needed no second invitation. Robbie Stapleford now moves on to the tail of Newsham Senior, who is really outperforming Newsham Junior in this race. Callum stuck down in 14th with the only 33 kilos in the car, actually, so that is strangely off the pace.
And Isaac Smith has fallen to flat last, so he's just not making the progress right now, which is very disappointing for him for the championship. Another driver that's seesawed through the season. Right, 3rd, 4th, 5th. This Audi sandwich, if you like, because the Audi sandwiching Jack McIntyre's Honda. Down Hanger Straight they come. Keithley ahead, Oliver behind in the Audis respectively, and Jack McIntyre trying to attack, trying to defend. Into Stowe Corner they come now, lap 6 then. What have we got left? 13.5 minutes plus the regulation lap as they go down through Vale now. Lead gap is coming down and down and down. Rob Butler getting closer to Dan Zelos as McIntyre is close enough to make a move. Thinks about the outside at the end of Vale. Oliver gets all crossed up behind him, but Jack Mack on the power comes through Club. That tiny little moment has just cost him a length, maybe even 2, relative to Jack Keithley ahead as they go past the pits now.
Yeah, he went to the outside there into the left-hander, trying to get the inside for Club, but it just didn't really work. So Keithley, as you say, buys himself a car length or so advantage over the 2 cars behind. I reckon Jordan Brennan might be getting a bit closer to this group as well. Looking the white and red Golf, lost that position to Charlie Oliver a few laps ago, but maybe he's starting to buy himself back into this. Lead gap, as you quite rightly said, came down a lap ago. I think there was a mistake for Zelos in the first sector because it was up at about 5 or 6 tenths, and then suddenly it was down to a quarter of a second. He is now starting to stretch the advantage again over Butler, and they are definitely getting away from Keithley, McIntyre and Oliver now. The gap between second and third, 1.7 seconds, as Jack Keithley has to start thinking about defending.
Yeah, seeing that they got altogether a lap ago, you're absolutely right. They've delayed one another. You saw the mistakes being made that compromised the pace. Still, David Ward is looking good for pole position. Now, Dave Marshall is up to 14th. The one that's really losing out in that midfield is Max Goff, tumbling down the order and therefore away from the benefit of the reverse grid, as James Merrill's there gets up the inside of Isaac Smith and goes through into 19th place. So Smith had battled his way back up the order, but has now lost out once again. Through goes 3rd, 4th, 5th, Keithley, McIntyre, Oliver. No change in the order. Behind them is Jordan Brennan, still hanging on to a place in the top 6 as we approach half distance, but Zelos stretching his advantage again over Rob Butler, so he's just been able to edge away slightly as Bird, then Max Edmondson and Dave Newsham rattle over the curb, and a change as Oliver gets up ahead of McIntyre. Then Charlie Oliver goes wide coming out of Chapel Curve onto Hanger Straight. Now they're going to be absolutely dead set level, are they? No, they're not, because McIntyre has the grunt to go ahead and Oliver gets into the draft, maybe now to get a toe to line up for a move heading down towards Stoke Corner. If that was the plan, it did not work.
Yeah, Oliver needs to get on with this now as well, because this battle is really giving Jack Keithley a chance to escape. Meanwhile, Robbie Stapleford up the inside of Dave Newsham, who doesn't get on well with Stoke Corner, does he? Charlie Oliver dives to the inside into Club. He's never going to stop the car, but the next corner is a right-hander, and he uses that to his advantage. Charlie Oliver does now break through into 4th place. But yeah, with every failed overtaking attempt that he was making on Jack McIntyre, so Jack Keithley was getting further and further away, and a podium for Charlie Oliver would be really significant now, as it would be, of course, for Jack Keithley, both of them trying to really gain ground in the points, but Charlie Oliver is the one with pace. 1.4 seconds back from Keithley he is now, but I think we'll see over the next few laps that gap starts coming down.
I think you might be right about that, as there is the Cupra then. Robbie Stapleford in 9th place ahead of Dave Newsham. Mike Epps still 11th, looking good for the front row for race 2 and potentially another truckload of points by the end of the day. But right now, Dan Zelos then leads by 0.674 of a second. Now have a look at that battle pack for 3rd, because Jordan Brennan has now got onto the back of Jack McIntyre. In other words, it's grown by another car. There is Brennan's Golf going up through Stowe, ready to drop down through Vale now for the 9th time of asking, approaching halfway on the time. Jordan Brennan is getting on with the job nicely, whereas behind him, look, Max Bird is losing touch because he's very busy trying to keep this man, Max Edmondson, at bay. Robbie Stapleford is 9th, Dave Newsham is 10th, and Epps and Ward, one with maximum ballast, one with no weight, are closing up to them as well.
Yeah, Mike Epps, in true Mike Epps fashion, is just getting on with this, makes a bit of a mistake through the second part of Club though, so David Ward, who we know is quick this weekend, is almost pushing Epps down the pit straight actually into the first corner. We ride on board with the championship leader, who I think might actually still end up retaining the championship lead, because he's ahead of the 2 or 3 drivers that are closest to him in the points. So again, despite finishing all the way down in 11th place, it's not making a huge amount of difference to the championship standings. It will tighten things up slightly as far as those towards the back of the top 10 in the points are concerned, but Epps just seems able, despite not always having electrifying pace, because he's always carrying this ballast, he just seems to have a way, doesn't he, of getting through these weekends without ever losing too many points.
Well, that's how you win championships, isn't it? He knows exactly what he's doing, when to hold, when to fold. Dave Ward goes past him. David Ward through on the inside into Stowe. Epps loses a place, loses points, but stays on the front row for race 2. So he can afford to let that one slide, can't he? And put himself in the box seat ready for the second stanza. Over the line here, Charlie Oliver 4th, chasing after Jack Keithley, going down now towards the right at Abbey. For the race lead though, Dan Zelos, having lost ground a couple of laps ago to Rob Butler, has really rebuilt the advantage. 9/10, 8/10, it's fluctuating around the 2, but he's building the gap once more. That's Dave Newsham going through, he's in 9th, he runs wide going through Abbey up towards Farm, and Max Edmondson goes ahead of him, and so Dave Newsham drops into 10th place, and he might be on his toes in a minute to keep David Ward at bay. Ward taking Epps with him, so this battle is going to run and run as well.
Yeah, David Ward has a best finish this season of 9th, which he actually took in the most recent race on the Silverstone International circuit, so he could be on to at least match that today. Look at the way Charlie Oliver has caught Jack Keithley. That was 1.4 seconds 2 laps ago, and now he's going to drive right round the outside of him at Stowe. There's a bit of a hip and shoulder on the exit, which seemed a tad unnecessary, but anyway, Charlie Oliver has managed to lever his way through. He's into 3rd. Could he even challenge for 2nd? We still have nearly 8 minutes plus 1 lap left in this race. He's 2.3, nearly 2.4 seconds behind Rob Butler in 2nd, but Butler is fading a little, at least compared to the leader, and Charlie Oliver's pace shows no sign of relenting.
We know that Charlie Oliver is the fastest race lap king, don't we? Because he's done this on 7 occasions. 7 bonus points for fastest laps for Charlie Oliver. And so now, with clear real estate ahead of him, yes, I reckon he can go after Rob Butler, but he has got a big gap, 1.8 seconds, 1.9 seconds. They're going through Jack Keithley, closing back up, taking Jack McIntyre with him. So some of Oliver's outcome in this race depends whether he's going to be able to shake them off and get after the leaders, or whether he's got to go defensive. And right now the answer is defend, because Keithley comes up to the outside line, getting a toe off him as well. Jack McIntyre's going to go through. So Oliver 1 up and 2 down. He was 3rd, he's now 5th going into Stoke. Keithley back into 3rd place, up to 4th. Goes Jack McIntyre, but he goes wide. Oliver's up alongside him as they come down through Vale to the inside line. Then is the blue Honda, to the outside line is the Audi. Oliver outbrakes McIntyre, goes ahead. He's got the inside line for Club. Has he managed to hang on to the place? Yes, he has. Great battle between the two, as Mike Epps then is out of the reverse grid benefit because he's just lost a place to Callum Newsham. He's now 13th.
Yeah, Callum Newsham coming out of nowhere to get back into this. Meanwhile, Charlie Oliver and Jack McIntyre continue their battle. Oliver defending his 4th position into Abbey Corner. And look, Jordan Brennan is really catching them now as well. That was a really interesting moment down the Hanger Straight a lap ago when Jack McIntyre was actually pushing Jack Keithley past Charlie Oliver, because he'd rather it was Keithley at the front of that queue than Oliver. Oliver has the pace to escape, but I don't think Keithley does. So for McIntyre's chances of getting on the podium, helping Jack Keithley back through into 3rd position was absolutely the way to go. Now, as for this battle for 9th position, this has trouble written all over it, doesn't it? Edmondson Ward, Callum Newsham, Mike Epps, Dave Newsham, all in a line, some championship contenders in the middle of it, and a race 2 pole position on the cards for one of these 5 drivers. On the inside goes Callum Newsham there, Dave Newsham, sorry that is, to take 12th place away from Mike Epps. They're wheel to wheel through Stowe Corner. Epps will try to fight back down the hill. He's got the inside for the next braking zone, but Epps is now in peril of losing this race 2 pole.
And I think he has lost it, has he not? Because just with his nose in front is Dave Newsham then as they get into Club. He should have the ability to go back through, but he really is struggling again with the weight. And as Dave Newsham comes by ballast free, he might be able to check out now and start to extend the advantage, as Ward has a cheeky look to the inside of Max Edmondson for 9th place going into Abbey. So Newsham is ahead of Epps, and look, he's pulled what, 1-2 lengths already. Ward versus Callum Newsham. They were side by side. Callum breaks ludicrously late, goes right round the outside of Ward, had a go at Edmondson as well. But Callum does get ahead of the Honda. Newsham Senior gets into the side of David Ward, so Callum is the one making his way up the order now. And Mike Epps might be being quite canny here, waiting for it to end in tears ahead of him. He can luck into a few places because it is getting a little bit more fractious up the road. Max Edmondson hanging on to 9th place for the moment, with Dave Newsham currently 12th, pole for race 2.
Tell you what, this is a really brilliant drive from Callum Newsham. I don't know where he's pulled this speed from, but suddenly in the second half of the race, he is absolutely on the money. Maybe he's saved his tyres a bit better than those around him. Certainly, I think that's the issue for Epps. All of that weight is certainly not going to be helping him look after his front tyres. I don't think it's any coincidence that he's fading as we now move into the final 5 minutes or so of racing. Out of Club Corner we go then, riding on board with Callum Newsham. We're into the top 10 already. There's one more place up for grabs here, one more championship point if he can take 9th place away from Max Edmondson, and Callum Newsham needs the points. He's 14 off championship leader Mike Epps. To only take 2 or 3 points out of him in this race, so every point he can get would help, but every position now that Callum Newsham gains puts him further down the grid for race 2, so that's also worth considering here.
The one that's a bit disappointing, dare one say, is Dave Marshall. On the one hand, he's keeping out of trouble, but he's not making the progress up to the back end of Mike Epps, and therefore he's not closing on that battle pack that might get him into the reverse grid benefit for race 2, as Oliver gets run out wide at Stowe by Jack Keithley. Charlie sticks out his own elbows, and Oliver asks for more as he comes down through Vale. He's on the inside line, heading into the braking zone at the end of Vale, now into Club, and he's gone through. So Charlie Oliver finally gets himself up into 3rd place and hopefully can stay there. Keithley down to 4th. Jack McIntyre then is 5th as they come off Club Corner with 6th Jordan Brennan. Right, we'll have another go at this. If anybody can catch the top 2 given his fastest lap pace, it is Charlie Oliver, and he has broken away from Keithley, who is busy battling with McIntyre. McIntyre was ahead, Keithley back through as you saw at Abbey, side by side towards Village. Jack Mack breaks late. retakes the place on the inside line, and Jordan Brennan is right up with Jack Keithley now, giving him a very tough time indeed.
Yeah, Jordan is really on it here as Dave Newsham and Mike Epps do battle for 12th position, this all-important race 2 pole position. For Dave, it's perhaps slightly less significant than it is for Mike. Dave is mathematically still a championship contender, but he might not be after this race. Epps with a switchback there, going through Chapel, onto the Hanger Straight they go, and Epps surely carried enough momentum off the corner there to get the job done, but that Hyundai is quick in a straight line, and it's carrying no ballast. That will help its acceleration, and it will allow Dave Newsham potentially to outbrake Mike Epps into Stowe Corner. They lean on each other. Oh, and sideways for Dave Newsham. Up the curb goes Epps, and look who's joining in the fun now. Dave Marshall sniffs an opportunity to get a race 2 pole position. The three of them together through the Vale into Club Corner. Mike Epps goes back through on the inside line, but he's desperately late on the brakes, runs very, very wide, and now Dave Marshall sees his chance. Nuzzles on the inside of not one but 2 of them. He's going to do it. Dave Marshall's going to get 3 into 12th position. They're side by side across the line. Brilliant racing.
So Marshall goes 12th. Can he stay there with just over 90 seconds on the clock plus the regulation lap? He's not going to be able to stay there with ease because Newsham's looking for a way past him. Epps wants to get past the pair. Max Goff has brought back into this little battle as well, but Dave Marshall, just when it might be counting, has got himself to 12th position. Might not sound a lot, but the importance is that pole for race 2 and the points you might be able to benefit from starting there. Out of Chapel Curve he comes now. Newsham right there behind him. Remember, Dave Newsham's car much lighter than those fore and aft. Max Goff carrying 39 kilos there in 15th place. In theory, Newsham should be able to sail past Marshall and then pull away, but he's not being able to do so. Has a look up the inside going into Stowe, gets his nose through, so that's going to give Dave Newsham 12. Marshall gets run out wide, he's off the road and back on again. Epps to the outside line, down through Vale, and Mike Epps is about, I think, to get himself back ahead of his championship rival, or is he? Because they're still side by side through Club. Epps goes ahead, Epps goes wide, Epps opens the door, Marshall sticks his nose up the inside, and as they come off Club Corner, is dead level with Epps, but Newsham is up into 12th place, so Dave Marshall's tenure there was pretty short-lived.
Yeah, now Dave Newsham's getting away because the 3 Peugeots are at play behind him. Epps then settles into 13th and now has it all to do again to close in on Dave Newsham. Dave Marshall 14th and Max Goff 15th. You'd think this was the battle for the race win, but it isn't. It's not so much the points that they're fighting for in this race, it's the potential points that could be scored in race number 2. It matters little, really, whether you finish 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. You're only going to gain a couple of points on the cars around you, but there's the potential for you to gain 20 or 17 or 15 points on them in race 2, and that, given how tightly bunched the championship table is still at this stage of the year, that could be really significant. I'm not convinced, though, that Mike Epps, try as he might, is going to have the pace here to close back in on Dave Newsham.
Right, Dan Zelos has just started his final lap then, clock hit 0. So Dan Zelos looking for his maiden win, and he is, what, now 2.5 seconds clear of Rob Butler. It's been a very good drive that. We've not seen much of Dan, but he's managed that gap, and really late race been able to build that gap massively over Butler, who is second. Oliver is third and still trying to close. Fourth is Jack McIntyre, fifth Keithley, sixth Brennan. Then you've got Bird, Stapleford, Edmondson, Callum Newsham to round out the top 10. 11th is David Ward, and 12th and pole for race 2 is Dave Newsham. The moment ahead of Epps, Marshall and Goff.
Yeah, Zelos through Stowe Corner looks good for the win. I tell you what, Charlie Oliver was giving this a good go, wasn't he, to catch Rob Butler? Another lap and he might have got there. That gap was over 5 seconds a few laps ago. He's going to take the checkered flag in a moment, probably less than a second away from second place.
So Dan Zelos then is going to score a race win in the 13th race within the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries. Then with Power Max Racing powered by VRRC, Dan Zelos takes the race win. Second across the line is Rob Butler, and third goes the way of Charlie Oliver. Fourth, Jack McIntyre. Fifth, Jack Keithley, and sixth, Jordan Brennan. For 7th place, it is Max Bird. 8th, Robbie Stapleford. Max Edmondson is going to be 9th, and Callum Newsham is 10th. 11th, David Ward. And what about 12th? Is it going to be Dave Newsham? Yes, it is. So Dave Newsham hangs on to 12th place and pole for race 2 ahead of Mike Epps, then Dave Marshall, then Max Goff, then Senna Proctor, none of whom really made progress, did they? Stuart Lyons next from Alex Toth-Jones, then it'll be James Merrills, Martin Richards down in 20th, 21st only Isaac Smith, and 22nd and last will be Kenny Press. But a really lively race in the mid-pack, but Dan Zelos did an outstanding job of being able to wriggle clear, fill the gap, and score his first win of the season. So let's just give you the provisional result then. Dan Zelos, the race winner, from in second place, Rob Butler, and then Charlie Oliver in third. Jack McIntyre taking fourth ahead of Jack Keithley and then Jordan Brennan. Max Bird, seventh from Robbie Stapleford, Max Edmondson, and 10th goes to Callum Newsham. Right, let's hear from our top three. Charlie Oliver third, Rob Butler second, but a first-time win for Dan Zelos, and he's with Andy McEwan. Well, he will be with Andy in just one moment.
Let's try again. It does help if I turn the microphone on, doesn't it? We'll try that again, Dan. Congratulations on the race win. We didn't see a lot of you during the race, but that's probably a good thing because it meant you just sort of stayed out of trouble, and despite the early pressure that you had from Rob, you were eventually able to pull clear.
Yeah, Rob was in my mirror throughout that whole race. I was a bit worried that I'd cooked my tyres a bit too early, just trying to get away from him, but I was able to hold a bit of a gap and had a kind of a couple of laps where I could just kind of settle down, get in the zone, and just concentrate on going forward. But I felt a lot of pressure, but I'm really pleased with the result.
Yeah, fantastic result, and as a late addition to the championship, it's left us all sort of wishing that you'd been here all along. I mean, we touched upon this a week ago. A championship campaign most definitely would have been on the cards, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the ballast makes a massive difference. You know, I feel for people like Dave, who's been coaching me along the way, but he's had a lot of ballast on, and so has everybody else, everyone around me as well. So the ballast does make a big difference. I'm quite lucky that I've got no ballast and I can be racing at the front every race. But no, I'm really pleased with my pace, and who knows, maybe next season.
How much of a help might that lack of ballast prove to be now in race 2? You're going to come through from 12th position, but you made good progress a week ago from, I think, 11th on the grid. So what do you think? Can you do the same again?
Hoping so. Everyone, a couple of guys in front of me like Rob, and then the two Audis were quick as well in that race. So hopefully we can all keep it clean in the first few laps and slowly pick them off one by one. The big toe down the back straight will hopefully make for some interesting overtakes, but we'll just have to see how things go.
Looking forward to it. Dan, congratulations after those 3 second places. Finally, you know what the top step of the podium looks like again. Well done. Dan Zelos then gets himself the race win. Chasing him hard in the early stages especially was Rob Butler. Rob didn't quite have the ultimate pace in the end to go after Dan, but a second place does your championship hopes no harm at all.
Yeah, absolutely. After missing last week, it's good. Dan's pace in the middle of the race was really good, and I buzzed my engine after about 4 laps, so it was I was struggling for a little bit of straight line speed, but yeah, the pleasures of sim racing is it'll repair itself before we go out again. But Charlie came at the end there like I've never seen before. I know I was a little bit down on pace, but my word, he was fast, so he'll hopefully we can just get through to the front and consolidate the weekend and have a nice number of ballast going into Brands Hatch GP.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because by my rough mathematics, I think you're third in the championship now, but only 4 points off the top. But 9 drivers are covered by 10 points. So it's going to be difficult, isn't it, to really plan your strategy through this race ahead of Brands Hatch? Because you don't want to go there with a lot of ballast, but working out exactly what position in the championship you'll be in is going to be nigh on impossible, surely.
Yeah, it's one of those, if you go on the defence to try and get a result that you want, it might not happen, so you just got to drive the race like you normally would, and that's get as far forward as we can, score as many points, and what will be. But yeah, look, I wanted to get out of this weekend with 25 points. We've got 17 in the bag, so let's hope we can get those last 7 without any issues, and if it's more than that, well, it is what it is. So
looking forward to seeing how you get on in race number 2. Best of luck, and well done on second place.
Thank you.
Butler then gets himself P2, but coming hard at the end there was Charlie Oliver. And actually, Charlie has not joined us, unfortunately. That's a shame. I had lots of things I wanted to talk to Charlie about. Hopefully, we'll have a word with him maybe after race number 2. Well, there you go then, David. Sets the scene quite nicely now, doesn't it, for this final race of the weekend. This is it, the race that will set the scene for the championship decider at Brands Hatch in a week's time. And yet again, it could not be tighter.
Absolutely right. This is perhaps the race that determines who we need to worry about. It's not necessarily about winning this race, it's about staying in the mix, isn't it? Ready for next weekend. But race 2's grid is formed then. Dave Newsham is going to be the driver that will start on pole position then on the outside of this 1x1 staggered grid. David Ward with him at the front. Callum Newsham on row 2 with 33 kilos of weight, and Max Edmondson is going to line up alongside. We've got 1 minute to go to the start. Row 3, it's the 9 kilos of ballast carrying Robbie Stapleford and 15 kilos of weight for Max Bird lining up alongside. The 4th row, Jordan Brennan, 21 kilos, Jack Keithley alongside him ahead of Jack McIntyre, and then with 27 kilos, Charlie Oliver on row 5. Row 6 is Rob Butler and Dan Zelos, weight free. The 7th row, Mike at 75 kilos, Dave Marshall on 57. The 8th row, Max Goff with 39 kilos and 48 for Senna Proctor. The 9th row, Stuart Lyons and Alex Toth-Jones weight free. James Merrills and Martin Richards are on the 10th row. Row 11 is Isaac Smith with 66 kilos of weight, and Kenny Press with Mick Sutton hopefully to take part. If he does, he'll be at the back of the grid. I think he missed the earlier race. Now the lights are getting ready, and Charlie Oliver was having problems connecting to the server, so he's not there, I'm afraid. Charlie Oliver is going to be a non-starter as we go racing then. A good getaway by Dave Newsham to try to accelerate clear and grab the advantage on the run down towards Abbey for the first time, and he has done so. So it is Dave Newsham ahead of David Ward and Callum Newsham third then, as the cars wriggle their way up through Village, heading towards Chapel Curve for the first time in a moment. But to make the point again, Charlie Oliver not able to get himself onto the server for race 2, so straight away he hemorrhages points.
Yeah, that's going to do his points no good at all, but actually this might work out all right if he ends up losing ballast for the finale at Brands Hatch, but we'll get to that later. At the moment it is a Newsham 1-2. I don't think we've seen that yet this season. Dave ahead of Callum, father ahead of son, and it's son that could really do with scoring some points here. 10th place in the championship now, but only 11 off the top of the points. David Ward almost gets tagged sideways there by Max Edmondson as he chopped across his nose into Stowe Corner. Robbie Stapleford 5th, another driver looking for another win here. Hasn't been really contending for wins since earlier on in the season. There he is in the orange Cupra with Keithley and Bird side by side behind him.
Right, so 1 lap in the book then as they make the run up towards the timing line. Jack Keithley there on the inside line, Robbie Stapleford's Cupra on the outside as they come off club. Behind them is Max Bird. Then you've got Jack McIntyre in that battle pack as well. So Dave Newsham leads by over a second from his son Callum in 2nd place. David Ward is 3rd. Max Edmondson 4th. Where in all of this is Mike Epps? He's up to 11th. Zelos not yet making progress because he's still 12th, which is where he was on the grid. As there, almost 3 wide, Stapleford trying to defend from Brennan and also sort out Bird, who has dropped way back because Jack McIntyre's got up alongside him and he's going to go through, is he? Yes, he is. McIntyre goes by.
Yeah, McIntyre's got some really good pace here, and you could see that by just how late he braked into Village and still got the car stopped for the corner. So McIntyre then goes 8th position. Jordan Brennan ahead of him. Max Bird behind is defending from Rob Butler and Mike Epps. This is another important battle. Rob Butler with a point to prove and lots of points to be scored here. Tries to get a good exit out of Stowe Corner. He's up the inside of McIntyre. Bird runs out wide as well. It's a big shuffle going on here as they descend upon Club Corner for the second time. Butler on the outside line just wants to try and get himself back in the queue, which he does, and he does so a good 3 or 4 positions ahead of Mike Epps. Epps is still only 12th position, really ruined missing out on that race 2 pole position. Dave Newsham is running away with it out in front, and remember he's the one that stole that 12th Epps in the final few laps.
But can Mike Epps lose his championship lead and lose a bit of weight in the process? Right now, as you see there, going way out wide, Martin Richards, his drift experience catches the slide, and it was all mayhem behind him. He got away with that. Isaac Smith, 17th, being delayed. Martin Richards then goes through. That's Alex Toth-Jones, who is in 15th place in the other PowerMax Racing entry. Callum Newsham looking to try and score well here. He came into the event 6th in the championship. He's running 2nd. It would be a useful thing if Dave Newsham let him by, wouldn't it? If they can work together, get away from the pack, and then maybe switch around to let Callum get the points going towards Brands Hatch. He might argue, though, that he doesn't want too many points and get too far up in the title race before Brands, because then he has the weight to carry. So you come back to this decision of what you do on tactics. There is Jack McIntyre, hard at work. You can see him on the inset at the wheel of the sim, turning his way through club now. He's on the back of Rob Butler, and he's trying to keep Dan Zelos at bay. This is 9th, 10th and 11th.
He's not the most animated of drivers to watch, is he, in his rig, but he is certainly getting the job done here. He got shuffled out a bit on the previous lap, but he's settled into 10th position now as they work their way through Abbey Corner. Jack Keighley here in 5th position, trying to get ahead of Max Edmondson in 4th, as they both try to work themselves away from the Stapleford-Brennan-Bird battle. Keighley up the inside into Chapel, right over the curb and the grass on the inside. They still somehow end up trying to share the same bit of real estate on the exit of the corner, despite giving each other a lot of room through the apex. And so Edmondson hangs on. Keighley's been delayed now. Stapleford pulls up alongside him. And this is the problem. You lose momentum and you risk losing not just 1, but maybe 2 or 3 places, because everyone's on top of everyone. You just can't escape. And if you get shuffled out wide, you can end up losing several places.
And one being shuffled there, Max Bird then, because Rob Butler made a bit of a dive up the inside, and that forced him out wide. Jack McIntyre gets back ahead of Max Bird as well. So picking up on what we said earlier on in the day, poor old Max Bird seems to get roughed up at the bottom end of that top 10 by different people at different venues, but it always seems to happen against him. Max Edmondson over the line, so we've gone 1/4 distance pretty much as he brakes hard and turns into Abbey, attacking Jack Keighley ahead of him, defending though, because they're right behind him. The car you can see in the mirror, that of Robbie Stapleford, who is in 6th place, and he in turn has got Jordan Brennan crawling all over the back of him. So tough times this for Edmondson. He's trying to attack, he's trying to defend. That is McIntyre, who has just lost out because Mike Epps has got up past him there. And also in a big hurry is Dan Zelos all of a sudden, who's hit 8th place, and Epps looking a bit frustrated about life.
Jack McIntyre was ahead of this lot a couple of corners ago, and Max Bird dived up the inside into Village, knocked McIntyre out wide, and now Jack's trying to fight back. He's got back ahead of 2 of them already as they head into Stowe Corner. That puts him 9th, but Dan Zelos, the big winner out of that, goes 8th. No, he doesn't. McIntyre goes around the outside of him and gets 8th place back again. There's contact coming out of the corner. That delays them both. Bird's up the inside of Epps, who's trying to go up the inside of McIntyre as well. Joel Dan Zelos sideways now. Just as soon as you gain ground, you can so easily end up losing it at the next corner. That how did that settle out in the end? McIntyre 8th, Epps 9th, Zelos 10th, Max Bird 11th. And look at who's joining in now. Stuart Lyons and Alex Toft-Jones, who we haven't seen much of today. Alex is rapid, we know that, and that Peugeot is finally joining in some top 10 battles.
However, that did get sorted out. It got Mike Epps smiling, at least for a moment or two. So he is currently in 9th place. Really fierce fight, all of this, as they're going through. You see Alex Toft-Jones in 14th, still giving a little tickle to the back of Stuart Lyons up the road ahead of him. And that leaves the door open for Robbie Stapleford, who had fallen way back to 14th, but he goes through now, picks up a place at the expense of the former Ginetta and Porsche racer Alex Toft-Jones. On to Hanger Straight once more. Now, meantime, Dave Newsham is on lap 6 and he's 2.4 seconds ahead of Callum Newsham. In other words, Dad is escaping up the road, which is not great for Callum's points haul. But Dave probably thinks, well, I'm overdue a bit of good fortune, and if I can have a win here, that will be a mighty good thing. Stapleford and Lyons get themselves together, look, coming down through Vale. That might just open the door for Alex Toft-Jones to be able to attack in a moment. Let's see, because Stapleford was way deep at the end of Vale there, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Robbie Stapleford, I think, managed to gather it all together. All right over the curve for Alex Toft-Jones, who's got his teammate Martin Richards breathing down his neck. In fact, Martin goes to the inside and will try to go through an Abbey Corner and hits him. That's not good. Sideways, good car control there for Toft-Jones. And now Martin Richards gets a dose of his own medicine there from, who was that? That was Senna Proctor, who was trying to take advantage of it. And the big winner is Isaac Smith, who a lap or two ago was getting nerfed sideways at exactly the same corner. Now works his way ahead of Richards into 16th place.
So finally Smith making a bit of progress, but he's still outside the points, frustratingly. The Power Max Racing cars getting themselves together. Q sponsors product now to polish out the dents and make them look shiny again, but that was all a bit fierce between those two. There is Mike Epps going by. He's into the top 10 now, so he's creeping forward, gaining points all the while. Where is the next target? Dan Zelos is up the road, and he in turn is looking for a way past McIntyre. But the Newshams, first and second. Now, a few weeks ago, we were being told off for mentioning them, because every time we did, they had appalling luck. But right now, this could be the day of days for Dave and Callum. It is senior ahead of junior, and David Ward having the race of his life, seemingly in third position. David Ward is staying in touch with Callum, isn't he?
Yeah, really is. He's the only one, really, that can live with the pace at the moment of the Newshams out in front. Dave is setting the pace, but David Ward is going with Callum Newsham, and in fact, closing in through the first sector on this lap. There is the FastR liveried car right on the tail of the second of those white and red Hyundai i30Ns as they race their way down the Hanger Straight. You're right in what you say that Dave Newsham, really, if he's going to play the team game here to try and help his son build a championship campaign, then giving away the race win would be the thing to do. But if that is the plan, I think Dave is going to try and prove a point first, isn't he? Our memory goes back to a rather famous Austrian Grand Prix a couple of decades ago where the two Ferrari drivers had a similar situation, didn't they? One of them told to give the win away to the other and waited right until the very end of the race just to prove they would have won the race had it not been for team orders. Well, this is a bit different, I suppose, since it is a family link, not just teammates. We'll have to wait and see what Dave elects to do in the final stages of the race.
We've lost Senna Proctor and we've also lost Max Edmondson from the race. They have both retired with damage, so a shame that, because that's two quick drivers. And of course Proctor came here fourth in the championship, and Max Edmondson out of the top 10, but Senna not finishing, loses points, loses weight going to Brands Hatch. There's Dave Marshall, 17th, again trying to make the best out of all of this, but he needs to be in that top 15 to at least get some points. At that stage, okay, you might keep weight, but you want to make sure you've got points. He remains one of the very few drivers still to not have penalty points against his name, which could all be crucial come the end of the year, because lots of his rivals giving away points for misdemeanors. Max Bird up on the inside of Mike Epps, he goes 9th into Stowe Corner.
Yep, gains an extra point as well as he does so. As things stand, I've got Rob Butler moving ahead of Mike Epps by about 2 or 3 points. So Epps is at the moment on course to give away the championship lead, and of course there is the potential maybe for Butler to gain more ground if he can catch Jack Keithley, which he isn't. On the previous lap they were almost identical in pace, but if he could catch Keithley he could build a better cushion. And if you're going to take the championship lead going into the finale, you want to do it by as many points as you can, because in all likelihood you're going to start losing points over those final 2 races because of carrying the maximum ballast. So David Ward, if he's Rob Butler, excuse me, if he's done the maths and he realises that's what the championship situation is, he might be thinking about pushing a bit harder to get 4th place, or hoping that Mike Epps loses more ground. But whilst Mike does have Robbie Stapleford right behind him, there's not a big queue of cars behind the erstwhile points leader, is there? So Epps is actually not in too perilous position.
But it shows you the effect the weight can have, doesn't it? Because Mike Epps has had 3 race wins to the 1 of Rob Butler. He's lost 6 points in the championship through penalties to the 1 of Rob Butler. They've both had a non-scoring event, as in Snetterton for Mike Epps when he retired from race 1 didn't rejoin for race 2, and last time here on the national circuit Rob Butler had to miss the event. And yet, with all of that evidence that you think makes Mike Epps the man to beat, as you say, he's lost the championship lead temporarily. So it's fascinating to see because he's had to carry the weight, even though he's always been there or thereabouts and trying to score points, he's maintained that weight within the championship. And Rob Butler, less so, has been able to perhaps now outscore him with a lighter car. Anyway, it's all going to shape up very interestingly indeed going to Brands Hatch, as you see Robbie Stapleford going through. He's 11th, chasing after Epps. Where is Butler in all of this? He's 5th. 8/10ths back from Jack Keithley, so hunting him down as best he can. And there Rob Butler's Irish tricolour colours evident as he comes towards Stowe Corner. We are into the second half of the race then now. 8 minutes are on the clock plus the regulation lap, and look at this for second place all of a sudden. David Ward having a go at Callum Newsham, and Stapleford up the inside of Epps for 10th, and he goes through at Stowe.
Another point lost then for Mike Epps, another point further back from the championship lead. He's now only 1 point ahead of Jack Keithley, so if Keithley gains another position or 2, he could be the points leader going to Brands Hatch. And again, he'll start asking himself whether or not that's the right move. There's still a lot to shake out here, 7.5 minutes to go, and Keithley is closing on Callum Newsham and David Ward. And as Callum starts thinking more about defence now, that's only going to hold these 2 up and allow Keithley potentially to move even closer. Into the braking zone at Village they go. Newsham Jr., Ward and Keithley getting themselves closer and closer together, and they've got a decent cushion, haven't they, over Butler, Brennan, McIntyre and Zelos behind. So a 3-way battle for second is forming, and still no sign yet of Dave Newsham dropping back to help his son.
Alex Toth-Jones has served a drive-through penalty for corner cutting. And Isaac Smith is another driver that has headed to the pit lane and I fear retirement. So big shame that for Isaac Smith, because of course he was so strong a week ago and came here second in the championship. But it's been a disappointing day. Loses points, loses weight, but he's out of the race. So Isaac Smith is another one who we lose from race 2. The retirements list is becoming quite a long one, isn't it?
Yeah, longer than usual actually, and significant drivers, all 3 of them, aren't they, that have dropped out of the race at the moment. Also out of the points at the moment, Max Goff. So Max Goff doesn't look as though he's going to be a genuine contender going to the final rounds at Brands Hatch. But it can all change so quickly, can't it? With over 40 points still left on the table after this race. We're still going to be, I think, into double figures as far as potential champions are concerned. Jordan Brennan here, 6th position, going after Rob Butler, or trying to, but Butler's getting away, really, isn't he? And actually, it's Jack McIntyre and the rapid Dan Zelos who are about to start applying the pressure to Brennan. Zelos having a really good race here, doing exactly what he said he needed to do, as Dave Ward is up the inside of Callum Newsham, for 2nd place, and Ward goes through. Now, can he make that stick? Can he get away now from Callum and allow Callum and Jack to start scrapping over 3rd place? Newsham can't come back him into club, and now Jack Keithley is right there with them.
Yeah, Keithley could be the real danger here. So Callum Newsham loses a place, loses points. David Ward not in the championship fight. What about Jack Keithley then as he comes over the timing line? He does look quick. He's another driver without weight. So Callum Newsham is fighting his rear guard action, isn't he, in a sense? 33 kilos against the ballast-free cars of those around him. Is Keithley about to make a move? Newsham defends the inside line going up towards Village there. Keithley goes to the outside line, wide in, tight out. Is that the answer? Tries to get up alongside to find the track position ready for Chapel. Curve breaks hard, turns right. On his left-hand side is Callum Newsham, but Jack Keithley, I think, has done it. Yes, he has. He's gone through. That in the mirror is Callum Newsham. So Jack Keithley back up into 3rd place. A podium beckons for him. Newsham's got other ideas about all of this, but Keithley showing the pace that he's got.
Yeah, Jack Keithley then moves up that 1 extra position and now needs to try and set off after David Ward if he can. And look, Rob Butler has caught them now as well. So Butler suddenly rubbing his hands with glee. Butler still, mathematically, I think, would be the championship leader. So he really wants to gain as many points as he can now. Bag them whilst you have the chance, knowing that maybe in a week's time at Brands Hatch with the ballast, it might be a struggle to get the same sort of results. And suddenly for Butler, a podium is very much within touching distance. Keithley and Callum Newsham are right ahead of him. But he'll also be watching his mirrors because that McIntyre, Zelos and Brennan battle, which has seen some changing, hasn't it? McIntyre and Zelos both ahead of Jordan Brennan now. They are also getting closer together. From a neutral point of view, this is brilliant, isn't it? 4 minutes to go. Everyone getting themselves closer and closer together into the final few minutes of a race that could have such a large bearing on the championship.
Absolutely right. And if you think this has all been lively, just wait for the Grand Prix circuit next week. So it is going to be something to savour, isn't it? A great way to end a championship just before real world racing starts to get underway. So Max Goff a retirement, or at least 2 laps down. I fear he's going to be a retirement. Isaac Smith we've lost, Max Edmondson we've lost, Senna Proctor we've lost, but Rob Butler is now having a go at Callum Newsham. So not only has Callum been losing places, he's been losing ground, and he's about to lose another one. Rob Butler dives up on the inside line, through he goes, brakes very late for the end of Vale. Can he get the car controlled enough for Club Corner? Just about, but he goes wide through the first element of it. Callum Newsham back up on the inside line. He's going to retake the place, I think, coming off Club Corner. Over the timing line they go. Newsham on the inside line, Butler on the out, and Rob Butler has the grunt. He goes through, then that lighter car picks up 4th place, and McIntyre fancies his chances in all of this, and suddenly Callum Newsham's world is becoming a rather bleak place, isn't it? Because he's losing position after position.
Yeah, McIntyre moves through on the inside there, a mistake from Callum Newsham. He's getting a bit scrappy now, I think, isn't he? He couldn't get the car stopped into Village, so McIntyre goes ahead. Dan Zelos now is the next one to arrive on his tail, and not far back is Jordan Brennan, so there's the potential here for Callum Newsham to drop down at least to 8th position, and that's if he manages to avoid any contact that sends him further down the order. Down into Stowe Corner they go. Callum just moves to the middle of the road there to try and defend, and Dan Zelos for the time being can't find a way through. Zelos may race these drivers a bit differently, knowing that he is a part-timer essentially, not here for a full season campaign. He'll try and overtake Callum Newsham for sure, but he might take slightly fewer risks maybe than some of those who really have big points to score.
Let's see then, as Dan Zelos accelerates out of club, Callum Newsham up the road ahead of him. Zelos, though, he's a proper racer, and he and Callum, of course, race against each other in minis. Comes over the line, head down towards Abbey, then set the car up, flick right. Callum Newsham just with enough in hand there. Now the clock is going to hit 0 fairly soon. Can they squeeze this lap and one more out of the time? We'll have to wait and see, but we're getting towards the business end of things now. Lap 17 as Dave Newsham still leads the way from David Ward in second place, but he in turn is only half a second up on Jack Keithley. Zelos closing on Newsham and being closed in upon by Jordan Brennan. So look at that line of cars there for second place back to 8th. They're all in a line, and maybe the big danger in that is Rob Butler.
Yeah, definitely. And Jack Keithley, who has caught David Ward now. The inside goes Zelos there into Stowe Corner, ahead of Callum Newsham. Then 6th place for Zelos, 7th Callum Newsham. A case of what could have been. I mean, this race could have panned out very differently for Callum if Dave had let his father, Dave that is, had let him through into the lead earlier on. Then Dave Newsham could have played rear gunner and allowed Callum to pull clear. I understand that Dave Newsham wants a race win, but I wonder if there might be a slightly awkward conversation over the dinner table tonight about how their tactics could have worked out differently. Through they go then, onto what should be the penultimate lap of the race. Dave Newsham looks odds-on favourite for the win, but for second, it's anyone's guess. For fourth, it's anyone's guess. 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th aren't really that secure either.
Where's Epps in all of this? 11th then for the man that came here as championship leader. So as the cars wriggle their way up for the 18th time now, the race order is Newsham Senior, Ward, Keithley, Butler, McIntyre. There they are together. Dan Zelos 6th then, the race 1 winner. In 7th place, Callum Newsham, who may well lose even more before the end. He's got his regular rival Jordan Brennan up with him, and then there's a huge gap before 9th and 10th. Max Bird and Robbie Stapleford go through. So Butler versus McIntyre. One game for a championship, one rather less so. Jack McIntyre, another driver that joined in midway through the season. Butler doesn't want to just give away places, but he doesn't want to get involved in the battle. He doesn't need to. Dave Newsham, in the meantime, heading towards a race win, accelerates out of Club Corner onto the last lap of the race now. And whisper it, given the bad luck he's had all season, Dave Newsham looks like he's going to do this one, Andy. He's virtually home and dry because he's got a huge gap over the rest.
Yeah, 3.5 seconds has got to be one of the bigger winning margins that we'll have seen all season long. He's been helped by some of the battling behind, which is still going on. Look, McIntyre to the outside of Rob Butler, who clearly has decided that he's not going to give places away here. He's not going to give points away for the sake of shedding ballast at Brands Hatch. He wants to get the best result he can. That appears to be 4th place. He's not going to make the podium here, but can he hang on to that 4th to the end? Can David Ward hang on to what would be a sensational 2nd place for Jack Keithley? Half a lap to go and still so many questions.
Well, Dave Newsham looks as though one of those will be answered with his name, as in who's the race winner. But for 2nd, for 3rd, for 4th, it's all kicking off. Butler versus McIntyre. That leaves the door open for Zelos, look. So Rob Butler hangs on to 4th place. But look at the inset, because coming now out of Club Corner on the main image now, Dave Newsham is set for his first win in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. It is a win for Dave Newsham. 2nd across the line just is David Ward ahead of Jack Keithley. Rob Butler bags 4th ahead of Dan Zelos. 6th Jack McIntyre. 7th is Jordan Brannan. Only 8th Callum Newsham. Max Bird takes 9th. 10th Robbie Stapleford. 11th, I think he's best of the year, James Merrills. 12th Stuart Lines. That's arguably his best as well. Let's just double check it for Stuart. It is his best of the season. 13th is Mike Epps. 14th Martin Richards, and Dave Marshall only 15th ahead of Alex Toth Jones. And here to round out the order is Kenny Press. Wow, very lively indeed. Mike Epps only 13th. Doesn't score brilliantly in that, but he does lose a fair chunk of weight potentially going towards Brands Hatch. But great effort by Dave Newsham. It's been a long, long time since Dave was a touring car race winner, but he has done so. 2nd, David Ward, first podium for him. Jack Keithley, 3rd. Let's hear from our top 3 drivers in a few moments. Andy McEwan is on his way to the interview area. Quickly run through the top 10. Dave Newsham, the winner. David Ward, 2nd. Jack Keithley, 3rd. 4th goes to Rob Butler from Dan Zelos, 5th, and Jack McIntyre 6th. It's Jordan Brennan 7th from Callum Newsham and Max Bird. Robbie Stapleford rounds out the top 10. But it'll be a delighted Dave Newsham, winner of race 2 at Silverstone.
Yes, I should think so. Dave Newsham, welcome to the podium. Welcome to the top step of the podium. It's been a long time coming, this. What you needed was a nice quiet race where everyone fell over each other behind you and you could just escape into the distance. And that, for once, is exactly what you got. Dave is muted, I think, at his end. Let's see if we can get that sorted, because we'd like to hear from our race winner, Dave Newsham. If not, we'll move on maybe to second place and come back to him. Yeah, I think he's experiencing a few technical issues at his end. Stick around though, Dave. Try and unmute your mic and we'll get back to you in a sec. Let's move on to David Ward, shall we? First of all, then, David Ward in second position, and an important second place for you as well there, because that is by far the best we've seen from you all season long. The potential has been there, and finally you've been able to stay out of trouble and get the result that you've been craving all year. Yeah,
that one feels really good. The field's top class, everyone's driving exceptionally. I've had some bad luck, but to come away with second place, kind of played the game though in the first race. I knew that there was going to be a reverse grid, so didn't really want to battle too hard with the guys, but hey, you got to play the game, haven't you?
Absolutely, and these reverse grids have been a bit of a game changer really this season. We've seen some people really benefit from them, but it's fair to say you've been on the pace really the last couple of weeks. I mean, Silverstone National and here on the international circuit, there's been a marked improvement in performance from you. Is Silverstone a circuit that just seems to suit your driving style a bit more?
I think it's actually working out how to set the car up and how to drive it. Predominantly I've been driving rear-wheel drive cars in sims, and then coming to front wheel drive, the engine's in the wrong place. Some would say in the right place, but it's completely different driving style to what I'm used to, so it's just getting accustomed to that, spending a lot of time, but yeah, I'm over the moon, mate. It's awesome.
How have you been enjoying the season as well? It's been great to have you on the grid this year. I mean, you've been learning a lot, that's clear, as the season's gone on. Have you enjoyed yourself whilst you've been doing it?
Yeah, everyone's been great. You know, all the guys at VRRC have been really welcoming. It's like a little club day sometimes, coming onto server and just hanging out, following people, stealing their lines. But yeah, it's been great fun. So hopefully, if they do it again, I'm sure they will. I'm gonna come and have another go. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you could do after having this season under your belt to really build on. So we look forward to that. We look forward to seeing you at Brands Hatch in a week's time as well. And huge congratulations on what I know is a really important result for you. Thank you very much, mate. Thanks to FastR as well for sponsoring the car and the whole event, and all the guys in the FastR eSport team.
Yeah, absolutely. All of our series sponsors doing a great job to allow us to put on this show for everyone at home. And we've all enjoyed watching you and the rest of the drivers, David, putting on that show. Congratulations. So David Ward then in second position. Right then, let's try Dave Newsham again, because I see that he's reappeared now in the podium area. Let's see if we can hear from Dave, our race winner. Dave, well done. Nope, I had a feeling that was going to happen. He's still muted for some reason at his end. We'll keep working on that. Jack Keithley is here, though. We can have a chat with him. And Jack, that was a really brilliant drive from you. You've had podium pace in both the races today, and it was important, setting us up for the finale in a week's time, that you really maximised that potential.
Absolutely. I mean, I was actually quite frustrated after qualifying. With the lap time I'd done in practice, I felt I should have got pole position, but you can't always hook it together. And in the race itself, I just had no grip after like halfway stage to the end. It was just gone. So I made a little bit of a surf change for race 2, and it worked. And yeah, I wouldn't have guessed I would have got a podium in the second race. I would have thought I'd got it in the first race at least, but I'm really happy to come out of this weekend with a pair of pretty good results. So yeah, moving on to Brands Hatch we go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about Brands Hatch. I'd be interested to know what your overriding emotion is right now. Are you looking forward to it, or are the nerves maybe starting to get to you now? Because you're going to be right in the championship hunt. We haven't yet seen the official points after today's race, but you're going to be inside the top 2 or 3, I think, with virtually nothing covering the top drivers. It's going to be an all-out brawl, isn't it?
I mean, you say nerves. They're there every morning. I mean, I'm going every single morning. That tells you how nervous I am all the time for these races. But I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm dreading it because I think I'm going to have like so much ballast. Like, I mean, I may as well pray for a big pile up in both races, but it'll be a lot of fun though, Brands Hatch. I love Brands Hatch GP, and let's hope we can make it as exciting to do as we watch British touring cars do on TV.
I'm pretty sure, given how tight this championship's looking going to the finale, that it will be quite the spectacle. Thanks for having a chat with us, Jack. Best of luck for Brands Hatch, and well done on the podium.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to my agent from Source One Associates for introducing me to this fine league.
Yes, indeed. We've been happy to have you here. Thanks, Jack. Right, third time's a charm, hey? Let's have a word with Dave Newsham then. Dave, it's been a long time coming, this, not just getting a chance to talk to you, but also seeing you on the top step of the podium. And actually, that race was pretty uneventful, which for once is not a bad thing.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Dave.
Excellent. Me and technology are not good. Not good friends at all.
Yeah, you get on with your car better than technology, clearly.
Yeah, I spent most of that race looking in my mirrors, just wanting Callum to. If Callum could have stayed in second place, he'd have had a win out of it. But it was. I don't know what else I could have done to help Callum. To be fair, if I'd have tried to help him, I probably got in the way, and he got eaten up at the end there. So I thought, let's just go for it and see what happens. And yeah, I've had pretty good pace round here. I messed qualifying up big style and then had a really scruffy race one, but it helped me for race two, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. If you can get yourself that trap position in race two and just get your head down and escape, then a race win is always on the cards. And we've never doubted your pace. Your problem this season has been that you've been a bit of a trouble magnet, haven't you? Every race, if there's a big accident, if there's contact in the early laps, if there's someone else's accident to be involved in, it always seemed to be you that got involved in it, didn't it?
It was kind of incredible, really. I just seem to be in the wrong place every single time, and I don't think it's anything deliberate from the guys. It's just I just happen to be in a place where people are either not seeing me or has been contacted and somebody's hit me, and it's been one of those seasons. Good fun though.
It's been great fun to watch, and it's been great fun to watch you getting better and better at this whole sim racing thing. Because I think I'm right in saying you didn't have a huge amount of sim racing experience until the last year or so, but there's been a real improvement I've seen over the last 12 months or so. Are you enjoying sim racing?
I do. I really enjoy it. Yeah, I only got a set of Corsa just literally for this series here, so it took a bit of getting used to. But I seem to be getting there now. I think the weights are helping him and flattering me a little bit, to be fair. But yeah, I seem to be fairly quick consistently now. So I thought that would happen. I thought I'd get quicker as the season goes on. And just having clean races helps.
Yes, definitely. And well, regardless of what ballast you were carrying, a win is still a win, and it's great to finally see you get that breakthrough result, Dave. Big congratulations, and we'll see you again next week at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, we'll see you there. Cheers.
Good stuff. There we go then. We got there in the end. We finally had a chat with our top three finishers, and some real good feel-good stories there, aren't there, after the second race of the day. Let's maybe bring in our series director then, Rich Hayden, to get his thoughts on what has been a fascinating afternoon of racing, Rich. The championship we'll talk about in a second. Let's talk about the races in isolation first, because they were another two really exciting ones.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit scrappy at the start of both races, but nothing that really needed a safety car out. So very pleased about that. But very exciting. I know a lot of the guys were struggling with tyres towards the end of both races. It's a real killer on the front left, this track. So yeah, very exciting racing today. Can't wait till next week.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic, isn't it? And as ever, picking a driver of the day is a bit of a challenge, really. I mean, Charlie Oliver was desperately unlucky that he didn't get to take to the grid for race two. He, I think, would have been a candidate for driver of the race. Dan Zelos drove really well. So many standout drivers. Each individual race seems to produce a different crop of drivers that are performing well.
Yeah, it's always tough, isn't it? Every week, we're kind of sitting there going, Jesus, which one do we pick? I have to say, for me, it's Dave Newsham with his first win. I'm really pleased for him. And, the fact that, as he just said, he only picked up a Assetto Corsa for this championship to get a race win in this field with such high quality is great, great for him. So really pleased. And yeah, Dave Newsham's my driver of the day.
Yeah, popular winner as well. I know Dave gets a lot of support on the social media channels during the course of the races as well. So a good choice, I think, there, Rich. Right then, Brands Hatch. 1 week time, we will decide our champion, and it could still be any one of about a dozen people, I think. I mean, at the start of the season, could you have dared believe that it would be this finely poised at this late stage of the season?
It's crazy, right? You've got your top 10 drivers. There's only 16 points between the top 10. So with 40 points on offer for 2 race wins, plus your fastest laps, plus your pole positions, it's anybody. I think it's anybody's game in the top 15 by the looks of it. Top 14. So wow.
I don't know about you. I can't wait for Brands Hatch. It's going to be a real barnstormer, and who knows who's going to come out on top in the championship. Rich, thank you again for all of your help. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to have a chat with us. We'll see you again at Brands Hatch.
Cheers, bye.
Then, David, that is it. The scene is set for the championship decider at Brands Hatch in a week's time, and I think it's going to be quite exciting, isn't it?
I must learn how to use spreadsheets for next week, I think, because there's going to be an awful lot of calculation to do after race 1. We're going to start, if you like, with the opening race, losing a few out of that championship battle, but then how many we're going to have is going to be an absolutely fascinating second race. Rob Butler provisionally putting himself into the lead of the championship from Jack Keithley, and Mike Epps drops to 3rd ahead of Jordan Brennan, Charlie Oliver and Callum Newsham for 6th, Max Bird 7th. Dave Marshall all of a sudden falls to 8th, but he's only 13 points off the top, and he's the only driver up there without penalty points in the championship. Robbie Stapleford and then Isaac Smith, 2nd at the start of the day, now down to 10th. So the championship is shuffled, the ballast that they're going to carry is shuffled as well. And yes, roll on Brands Hatch in a week's time. We've had some great touring car showdowns there in the real world. We can expect one in the virtual world as well then in our final races within the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. Right, 2 great races from Silverstone. The final 2 great races are in just a week's time. We'll crown a champion. We'll have great racing on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch. And we'll see you in a week's time. For now, from Andy McEwan and David Addison, it's goodbye from Silverstone.
between the two of them. The inside of Coates. Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.